My name is Gwen, and I am 33 years old. I was married to Sterling Hale, the man our city called a hero. He was 38, handsome, confident, and always ready with a warm smile. People trusted him before he even finished a sentence. When he walked into a room, strangers turned to look. When he shook a hand, people believed he truly cared. When he gave a speech, the whole crowd leaned closer. Sterling was running for state senate. In our town, that meant everything. His face was on yard signs, bus benches, mailers, and bright posters in shop windows. Local newspapers called him the savior of the city. Radio hosts praised him every morning. Business owners wanted photos with him. Parents told their children to grow up and be like him. Everyone loved my husband. Sometimes, I almost understood why. If a neighbor's car broke down at midnight, Sterling put on his coat and went outside. He brought tools, smiled in the cold, and said, "Don't worry, I am here." The next day, that neighbor told everyone what a good man Sterling was. If an old woman lost her dog, Sterling joined the search. He walked through dark streets with a flashlight. He called the dog's name until his voice grew tired. When they found the dog under a porch, Sterling carried it like a baby. Someone took a picture. The picture went online. Thousands of people shared it. If a young father could not pay for groceries, Sterling paid at the store. He made sure the cashier saw it. He made sure someone heard him say, "We take care of each other in this city." People cried when he said things like that. They never saw me standing behind him. They never saw me holding his notes, fixing his tie, or reminding him of the Father's name before he spoke. They never saw me write the words that made them cry. They only saw Sterling. They saw the smile. They saw the clean suit. They saw the man who always had time for everyone except me. At campaign events, women touched my arm and said, "Gwen, you are so lucky." I smiled because I knew my role. "You married an angel," they said. I smiled again. Sometimes, I wanted to ask them where that angel went at night. I wanted to ask why he gave the world his best voice and gave me only silence. I wanted to ask why a man could save a city and still let his wife disappear in the same house. But I never asked. I learned long ago that truth made people uncomfortable. They preferred the poster. They preferred the speech. They preferred the story where Sterling Hale was good, and I was the quiet wife beside him. So I stood beside him. I stood there in neat dresses and low heels. I clapped at the right moments. I laughed at the right jokes. I placed my hand on his arm when photographers asked for one more picture. I looked proud. I looked calm. I looked loved. After the cameras left, he checked his phone. That was our marriage. The phone rang. He ran to help a friend. The phone rang again. He ran to help a stranger. I sat at the dinner table alone. The food became cold. He loved the voters first. He loved his staff second. He loved the cameras third. He loved me last. I did not always see it so clearly. At first, I believed in him. I believed in his message. Sterling spoke about poor schools, broken roads, high rent, and tired workers. He said the city needed hope. He said people deserved leaders who listened. Those words mattered to me. I wanted to help build something better. So I helped. Then I helped more. Then I became the whole machine behind him. Sterling called me brilliant when we first met. Back then, He said it like a gift. He read an essay I wrote for a local policy group, and he told me I understood people better than any advisor he had ever hired. I was 28 then. He was already popular. He took me to dinner and asked about my ideas. He listened like every sentence mattered. That was how he won me. He listened. Now, I know listening was one of his talents. He could offer it like a flower and take it back when he no longer needed to impress you. After we married, I wrote his speeches. Then I wrote his policy plans. Then I wrote his debate answers, press statements, apology notes, donor emails, and town hall remarks. I built his message piece by piece. I chose the words that made him sound strong but kind. I chose the stories that made him sound honest. I made him look like a man with depth. He took those words onto stages and made them his own. Crowds stood for him. Reporters praised him. Donors wrote checks. And I stayed up after midnight at the kitchen table, writing the next line. In the morning, I ironed his suits. I packed his folders. I reminded him to mention the school nurse whose husband had cancer. I told him which local pastor felt ignored. I corrected his numbers before interviews. I fixed his mistakes before anyone else saw them. He called that support. I called it love because I needed it to mean something. But love should not make one person empty. I learned that slowly. One winter, I had the flu so badly I could barely stand. My body hurt and my throat burned. I asked Sterling to bring me soup on his way home. He sighed into the phone. "Gwen, take an aspirin," he said. "Please do not start. I have a meeting." I stared at the wall after he hung up. The room felt too quiet. I told myself he was tired. I told myself campaigns were hard. I told myself important work required sacrifice. That night, he came home with takeout for himself. He ate in his office while I shook under a blanket. The next morning, he gave a speech about caring for sick families. People cried. Another time, I fell asleep at my desk after writing 3 speeches in one night. He woke me by tapping the table. "Where is the education draft?" he asked. I looked up at him. My eyes burned. My neck hurt. "Good morning to you too," I said. He frowned like I had wasted his time. "Gwen, today is important." It was always important. The debate was important. The fundraiser was important. Veronica's stress was important. A donor's birthday was important. A reporter's opinion was important. A photo at a new park was important. I was useful, so I was expected. I was tired, so I was dramatic. I was hurt, so I was selfish. Veronica Lane, his campaign manager, understood this better than anyone. She was 35, sharp, pretty, and always close to Sterling. She called him at all hours. She sent long messages with red exclamation points. She said every problem was urgent. Sterling always answered. Once, during dinner, Veronica called because a press release had one weak sentence. Sterling stood up before I finished speaking. "She sounds upset," he said. "So do I answered. He paused at the door and looked annoyed. "This is not the same thing." Then he left. I sat there with 2 plates between us. His chair was pushed back. His napkin lay on the floor. I heard his voice from the hallway, soft and patient. "Breathe, Veronica. We can fix this." He had not used that voice with me in months. Still, I stayed. I stayed because leaving felt like betraying the people who believed in him. I stayed because I thought the work mattered more than my pain. I stayed because good wives were praised for patience, and I wanted to be good. I stayed because every time I felt close to breaking, Sterling stood on a stage and said something I had written about justice, dignity, and hope. And people needed hope. So I told myself I could wait. I told myself after the election, he would see me again. After the next speech, the next crisis, the next headline, the next poll, the next victory, he would come home. And remember, I was not furniture. I was not a machine. I was his wife. But waiting changes a person. It makes your voice smaller. It makes your needs feel rude. It teaches you to ask for less, then almost nothing. By the time Sterling's campaign reached its strongest point, I had become very good at asking for almost nothing. I did not ask for dates. I did not ask for flowers. I did not ask him to come home early. I did not ask why Veronica knew his schedule better than I did. I did not ask why he thanked every volunteer in public, but forgot to thank me in private. I only asked him to look at me sometimes. Even that became too much. At night, I lay beside him while his phone rested on the pillow between us. Sometimes it lit up in the dark. Messages from staff, messages from donors, messages from Veronica. His face glowed blue when he checked them. My side of the bed stayed cold. One evening, after a large rally, we came home near midnight. My feet hurt. My head ached. Sterling threw his jacket over a chair and smiled at his phone. "Great night," he said. "Yes," I said. He did not look at me. The line about working mothers landed perfectly. He said, "I know." He laughed. "You really saved me with that one." For one small second, I felt warm. Then his phone rang. Veronica. His smile changed. It became softer. "Hey," he said. "No, you did great tonight. Really, I mean it." He walked into his office and closed the door. I stood in the hallway with my shoes in my hand. I looked at the closed door. I listened to him give comfort to another woman after I had given him the words that won the room. That was when a thought came to me. Not loud, not angry, just clear. I was not his partner. I was his power source. And even power sources run dry when no one cares what they cost. I should have left then, but I did not. Because I was still sick with hope. I still believed that if I loved him well enough, worked hard enough, and waited long enough, Sterling would finally turn around and see me. I did not know yet that some people only look for you when every mirror breaks. I did not know that the last promise he made to me would cut deeper than any lie before it. I did not know that soon I would wake in a hospital bed, reach for his hand, and find only an empty chair. I only knew that I was tired. I only knew that the city loved my husband. And I only knew that in my own marriage, I was already becoming a ghost. Pain had lived inside my body for years. At first, I treated it like a bad guest. I thought it would leave if I ignored it. I worked through it. I smiled through it. I took pain pills, used heating pads, and sat through campaign dinners with my hands pressed under the table. The doctors called it severe endometriosis. I called it another thing I had to manage alone. Some months, the pain was so strong that I could not stand straight. It felt like something sharp twisted inside me. I would walk from the bedroom to the bathroom with one hand on the wall. I would breathe through my teeth and tell myself I had meetings to prepare for, speeches to finish, and a husband who needed clean shirts. Sterling knew about it. He knew the name. He knew the surgery date. He knew I was scared. But knowing and caring were not the same thing. When the doctor told me I needed major surgery, I sat in the exam room with a paper gown across my knees. Sterling was supposed to come with me, but he had a breakfast meeting with local donors. He sent a text 5 minutes before the appointment. "You are strong. Tell me what they say." I read that message 3 times while the doctor explained risks, blood loss, recovery time, and possible complications. The room smelled like cleaner and cold paper. I nodded, like I understood everything. I did not cry until I reached my car. That night, I told Sterling the surgery would be serious. He sat across from me at the kitchen table. For once, his phone was face down. "Gwen," he said, "I know I have not always been good about this." I watched him carefully. He reached for my hand. His hand was warm. I hated how much I wanted that warmth. "I will clear my schedule," he said. "I will be there when you wake up. I swear. You are my priority." My throat closed. "Do you mean that?" I asked. He looked straight into my eyes. "Yes," he said. "I promise." For one night, I believed him. That is the cruel thing about a broken promise from someone you love. It does not break only when they fail you. It begins breaking the moment you believe it. The morning of the surgery came gray and cold. Sterling drove me to the hospital before sunrise. He wore a navy sweater instead of a suit, and for a while, he looked like my husband, not a candidate. He carried my bag. He checked me in. He answered the nurse's questions. He even placed his hand on my back while we waited. I felt weak with relief. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe fear made him remember me. Maybe pain could do what love had failed to do. In the pre-op room, a nurse placed a band on my wrist. Another nurse asked me to confirm my name and date of birth. Machines beeped softly around me. The curtain did not fully close, so I saw other people's shoes pass outside. Sterling sat beside the bed and held my hand. I looked at him and tried to memorize his face, the strong jaw, the soft hair, the public smile, gone for once. He looked worried, or maybe I needed him to look worried. "I am scared," I said. He squeezed my hand. "I will be here," he said. "When you wake up, I will be right here. Promise?" "I promise." The nurse came to roll me away. Sterling stood and kissed my forehead. "I love you, Gwen." I wanted to say it back, but the words caught. I only nodded. Then they pushed me down the hallway, past white lights and closed doors. Inside the operating room, everything looked too bright. The air felt cold on my skin. A doctor spoke kindly. A mask came near my face. I thought of Sterling, in the chair beside my bed. I thought of his promise. I held that promise like a rope. Then the room faded. When I woke, the world returned in pieces. First, sound. A machine beeped beside me. Then light. White ceiling, pale walls, a curtain moving slightly. Then pain. It came heavy and deep. My lower body burned. My throat hurt. My mouth felt dry. I tried to move, and a sharp pain stopped me. I made a sound I did not know I could make. A nurse leaned over me. "Gwen, you are awake. Try to stay still." I blinked. My mind felt thick. I tried to ask for Sterling, but my tongue would not work. The nurse gave me water with a small sponge. She told me the surgery was over. She told me it had been complicated. She told me I had lost a lot of blood, but I was safe now. Safe. That word felt strange. I turned my head slowly. The chair beside my bed was empty. At first, I did not understand. I thought maybe he had gone to the bathroom. Maybe he had stepped out to call someone. Maybe he was speaking with the doctor. Maybe there was a reason. I looked at the chair again. Empty. A gray coat hung over another chair near the door, but it was not his. My bag sat against the wall. My phone rested on the small table, too far away for me to reach. "Sterling?" I whispered. The nurse's face changed. It was a small change, but I saw it. Pity moved across her eyes before she could hide it. "Your husband called," she said gently. "Called. Not came. Called." I stared at her. "He said there was an urgent campaign crisis," she continued. "He said he could not make it back right now." The room became very still. I looked at the empty chair. I looked at the nurse. I looked at the clear tube in my arm. I looked at the sheets, where a small red mark showed near my side. My body felt cut open and heavy. My mouth tasted like metal. "What crisis?" I asked. She did not answer. Maybe she did not know. Maybe she knew and felt too ashamed for him. After she left, I reached for my phone. It took me several tries. My hand shook. Pain moved through me each time I lifted my arm. Finally, my fingers touched the phone. I dragged it toward me. There were messages. 2 from Sterling. "Surgery done? Call me when you wake." Then another. "Proud of you. Had to handle something urgent. Back soon. Back soon." I opened the news app because my heart already knew. A live video filled the screen. There he was. Sterling stood in bright daylight, smiling in front of a crowd. A red ribbon stretched across the entrance of a new dog park. Children cheered. Dogs barked. Reporters held cameras. Veronica stood beside him in a cream coat, close enough that their shoulders touched. The headline read, "Sterling Hale opens new community dog park after emergency schedule change." Emergency. I watched him laugh. I watched him hold giant scissors. I watched Veronica touch his sleeve and lean toward him. Then Sterling spoke into a microphone. "This park is about care," he said. "It is about showing up for the ones who depend on us." My hand tightened around the phone. My body was cut open. My blood stained the sheets. My husband smiled on live television. He cut a red ribbon. He chose a dog park over his bleeding wife. He did not cheat on me. He did something worse. He erased me. I think part of me died in that hospital room. Not the soft part, not the loving part, the waiting part, the part that still believed he would return if I suffered quietly enough. That part died without noise. I did not cry. That surprised me. I had cried in cars, bathrooms, closets, and dark bedrooms. I had cried over missed dinners and cold answers. I had cried when Sterling forgot my birthday but remembered the birthday of a donor's wife. I had cried when he thanked Veronica in front of 500 people and called me my steady partner, like I was a chair. But in that hospital bed, I did not cry. The tears dried before they reached my eyes. Something else came instead. Clarity. It was cold, clean, and sharp. Sterling would never change. Not because he did not understand. Not because he was busy. Not because the campaign was hard. He would never change because my pain did not matter to him unless someone was watching. That was the truth. He could comfort Veronica over a press release. He could stop traffic to help a stranger. He could carry a lost dog for the cameras. He could speak about care with tears in his voice. But he could not sit beside me after surgery because there was no crowd in my hospital room. There was no photo, no applause, no headline. Only me. And I was not enough for him. A doctor came later and explained the surgery. I listened carefully. My body hurt, but my mind felt awake. She told me recovery would take time. She told me I needed rest. She told me not to lift heavy things. She told me to call if I had fever, bleeding, or severe pain. I nodded. Then she asked, "Do you have someone at home to help you?" I looked at the empty chair. "No," I said. The word left my mouth easily, because it was true. Sterling came the next afternoon. He arrived with flowers from the hospital gift shop and a face full of practiced concern. He kissed my forehead like the nurse was part of an audience. "Gwen," he said, "I am so sorry. It was insane yesterday. Total chaos." I looked at him. He placed the flowers on the table. The dog park thing became a mess. The mayor's office changed timing, and the press was already there. Veronica said, "Stop," I said. He froze. My voice was weak, but the word cut the room. He glanced at the nurse near the door, then back at me. "Honey, you do not understand campaign pressure." I almost laughed. Instead, I turned my head toward the window. "You promised," I said. "I know," he replied quickly, "and I feel awful. But you were safe. The doctors had you. I had to think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture." There it was. The phrase he used when he wanted me to disappear. I looked back at him. I woke up alone. His face tightened. "I came today, after the cameras. That is not fair." "No," I said. "It is not. For the first time in years." I did not try to make him feel better. I did not soften my words. I did not touch his hand. I did not say I understood. His eyes searched my face, maybe looking for the old Gwen, the one who apologized after he hurt her, the one who explained his actions for him, the one who carried his guilt so he could keep moving. She was gone. He did not know that yet. "I need to get back to headquarters," he said after an awkward silence. "But I will call tonight." "Do that," I said. He leaned in, but I turned away before he could kiss me. He left with stiff shoulders and a wounded expression, as if I had embarrassed him. When the door closed, I closed my eyes. I did not feel sad. I felt awake. 2 days later, I signed discharge papers with shaking hands. The nurse asked if my husband was coming. "No," I said. "I called a car." She frowned. "Are you sure?" "Yes." The ride home hurt. Every bump in the road sent pain through my body. I sat very still in the back seat, one hand pressed against my stomach, the other holding my phone. Sterling was on a campaign tour. He had sent 3 messages. "Thinking of you. Crazy day. Call you later." I deleted all 3. When the car stopped in front of our house, I looked at it for a long moment. White columns, clean windows, American flag by the porch. A perfect house for a perfect candidate and his perfect wife. But I was no longer perfect. I was no longer his wife in the way he wanted. I was evidence, and evidence always tells the truth. Inside the house, everything looked the same. That made it worse. His shoes sat near the door. His coffee cup was in the sink. His campaign jacket hung over the back of a chair. The dining table held a stack of mailers with his smiling face on everyone. Sterling Hale, a leader who shows up. I stood in the hallway and stared at that sentence until it almost became funny. Then I went upstairs. Packing hurt. Every movement pulled at my stitches. I moved slowly, but I did not stop. I took clothes, shoes, medicine, documents, and the small wooden box that held my grandmother's ring. I left the dresses I wore at campaign events. I left the heels that made my feet bleed. I left the pearl earrings Sterling said looked wife-like. Then I went to his office. That room had always felt more mine than his. He used it for phone calls and interviews. I used it for work. My notes filled the drawers. My drafts filled the files. My ideas lived inside his campaign server. Sterling thought they belonged to him because they helped him. He was wrong. I sat at the desk and opened the laptop. My hands shook, but not from fear. The password had not changed. Of course, it had not. Sterling never worried about me taking anything. Invisible people do not steal. They only serve. I opened the campaign server. There they were: speeches, policy drafts, debate plans, voter research, town hall answers, donor letters, crisis statements, strategy notes, every strong line, every careful answer, every plan that made Sterling sound like a man who knew what he was doing. I had written it all. I copied what belonged to me. Then I removed every speech, every draft, every debate strategy, and every note I had created. I did not touch donor records. I did not touch private data. I did not damage anything that was not mine. I only took back my own mind. When I finished, the folders looked empty and plain. So did Sterling. I took off my wedding ring. For a moment, I held it in my palm. It was beautiful, a simple diamond in a clean gold band. Once, I had looked at it and seen a future. Now, I saw a lesson. I placed it on his desk. Then I wrote one note: "Love your image. It is the only thing you have left." I left it beside the ring. Then I walked out of that house. I did not slam the door. I did not scream. I did not look back. 3 hours later, I was on the highway to the capital city. My body ached, and my pain medicine made the road look soft at the edges. I drove carefully. I stopped twice to breathe through waves of pain, but every mile away from Sterling felt like air entering my lungs. The capital was louder, colder, and brighter than my town. I rented a small apartment near a bus line. It had old floors, thin walls, and one window that looked over an alley. It was not beautiful, but it was mine. For the first week, I slept. Not peacefully. Pain woke me often. Fear woke me too. Sometimes I reached across the bed and touched only a flat sheet. Then I remembered I was alone because I had chosen it, not because someone had abandoned me. That difference mattered. After 10 days, I opened my laptop again. I started a political consulting firm from that little apartment. I named it Marlowe Strategy, using my maiden name. No grand office, no staff, no fancy website at first, just my experience, my laptop, and years of knowledge no one had credited to me. I emailed people I trusted, former nonprofit leaders, policy directors, city council staff. Women who had seen me work behind the scenes, people who knew Sterling's speeches, came from somewhere deeper than his own head. Some answered quickly. One wrote, "I wondered when you would finally step into the light." That message made me cry more than Sterling's betrayal had. Work came slowly at first. A small housing group needed testimony. A labor group needed talking points. A school board candidate needed debate help. I charged fair prices and delivered sharp work. People noticed. Then one afternoon, I received a call from Julian Reed. Julian was 40, a former public defender, and Sterling's rival for the Senate seat. He had a rough voice, tired eyes, and a habit of telling the truth even when it hurt him. Reporters called him difficult. Donors called him too blunt. Sterling called him angry. I called him honest. Julian asked to meet at a quiet coffee shop near the State Building. When I arrived, he stood to greet me. He did not look at my body too long. He did not ask why I moved slowly. He did not offer fake pity. He simply said, "Miss Marlowe, thank you for coming. Not Gwen, not sweetheart, not Sterling's wife. Miss Marlowe." I sat across from him. He placed a folder on the table. "I know you wrote Sterling's best material." I did not answer. He smiled slightly. "That was not a guess. I read your old policy paper from 5 years ago. Then I read his speeches. Same structure, same moral center, same mind." I looked down at my coffee. No one had ever said it so plainly. Julian leaned forward. "I do not want tricks. I do not want fake smiles. I want to win, because I am right about the work. But I need someone who can help people hear me. And you think that is me? I know it is." Sterling wanted me in the shadow. Julian put me in the light. He asked for my opinion. Then he waited for the answer. He did not interrupt. He did not check his phone. He did not look past me for someone more important. For the first time in years, a powerful man sat across from me and treated my mind like the main event. I took the job as his chief strategist, not because I wanted revenge, at least, not only because of that. I took it because Julian believed in the work. He cared about housing, wages, hospitals, and schools without needing applause for every good act. He visited people without cameras. He listened without turning it into a story about himself. He was not charming like Sterling. He was better than charming. He was real. Our first weeks together were intense. I rebuilt Julian's message from the ground up. I made his speeches clear but not fake. I prepared him for attacks. I showed him where Sterling's charm was weak. I taught him how to answer without sounding cold. He challenged me often, but he did it with respect. Sometimes he disagreed. "I cannot say that," he said once, pointing to a line. "Why not?" I asked. "Because it sounds too clean. Real people do not talk that way." I stared at him for a second. Then I laughed. He was right. We changed the line. That became our rhythm. I sharpened him. He grounded me. I built the frame. He filled it with truth. Meanwhile, Sterling's campaign began to fall apart. At first, I heard small things. A reporter friend told me Sterling gave the same answer 3 times at a town hall. A former volunteer said his new speech sounded empty. A donor complained that he had lost his fire. Someone posted a clip online of Sterling stumbling over a housing question he should have answered easily. Then the polling numbers dropped, slowly at first, then fast. Without my words, Sterling sounded like a man repeating old music from a broken machine. He smiled, but the smile no longer carried weight. He spoke about care, but people started asking what that care actually meant. He spoke about families, but he could not answer policy questions. He spoke about courage, but he sounded afraid. Veronica tried to fix him. For a while, then his numbers dropped again. That was when she left. Publicly, she said she needed a new professional challenge. Privately, everyone knew the truth. Veronica loved power. When Sterling began to lose it, she found a new place to stand. I was not surprised. Sterling called me the night she quit. I let it ring. He called again. I turned the phone face down. Then he sent a message. "Gwen, we need to talk. Things are complicated." I stared at those words. Things were not complicated. For years, I made myself small so he could look large. Then I stepped away, and everyone saw his real size. That was not complicated. That was justice. The final debate came on a rainy Thursday night. It was held in a television studio downtown, with bright lights, polished floors, and rows of serious people holding clipboards. Outside, supporters stood under umbrellas with signs. Some shouted Sterling's name. More shouted Julian's. I stood backstage with Julian. He wore a dark suit and held a folder with my notes. He looked calm, but I knew he was focused. Julian never wasted energy on false confidence. "You ready?" I asked. He looked at me. "Are you?" I smiled a little. I wrote the map, then I trust the road. That was the difference between him and Sterling. Sterling used my work like a costume. Julian used it like a tool. A stage manager called Julian's name. Before he walked out, he turned back. "Gwen," he said, "whatever happens tonight, your work changed this race." My chest tightened. "Go win," I said. He did. From the first question, Sterling struggled. The moderator asked about hospital funding. Sterling smiled and began with a warm story about a nurse he once met. It was the kind of answer that used to work for him, because I made the story lead somewhere. But this time, it wandered. He praised nurses. He praised families. He praised hope. He did not answer the question. Then Julian spoke. He gave numbers. He gave a plan. He named 3 rural clinics at risk of closing. He explained how the budget could protect them. He looked into the camera and said, "Care is not a ribbon cutting. Care is a working hospital when your family needs it." I stood backstage and felt my breath stop. Sterling's face changed. He knew that line was mine. The debate continued. On housing, Sterling blamed delays and committees. Julian named landlords, wages, and zoning changes. On education, Sterling gave soft promises. Julian gave steps. On public trust, Sterling smiled too hard and said leadership meant showing up. Julian turned to him. "Showing up means more than appearing when cameras wait," he said. "It means staying when no one claps." The studio went silent. Sterling blinked. For a moment, I saw him as the public never had. Not a hero, not a savior, just a man without borrowed words, standing under lights too bright for him. He stammered. He sweated. He repeated himself. He looked toward the side of the stage as if someone might save him. No one did. I did not move. When the debate ended, Julian walked backstage to strong applause from his team. He did not cheer. He came straight to me. "Was that all right?" he asked. I laughed because I could not help it. "Yes," I said. That was all right. Election night was even less dramatic than I expected. Sterling lost in a landslide. The city that had once called him its savior moved on with shocking speed. Reporters used words like collapse, disappointment, and empty campaign. Donors stopped answering his calls. Old friends became busy. People who once touched his shoulder in public now crossed rooms to avoid him. His image broke, and without it, he had nothing to hold. A month later, I walked out of my new office building just after sunset. The glass doors reflected the city lights behind me. My firm had grown faster than I expected. We had 3 clients, 2 staff members, and a real office with my name on the door. I was tired, but it was a clean tired, the kind that came from building my own life. Then I saw Sterling by my car. He looked smaller. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was messy. His eyes were red. He stood with his hands in front of him, like a man waiting for judgment. I stopped. "Gwen," he said. I did not answer. He took a step toward me. "Please, I just need 5 minutes. You had years." His face twisted. Then, in the middle of the parking lot, Sterling dropped to his knees. Once, that would have broken me. Once, I would have rushed to lift him, protect him, forgive him, and make his pain easier to carry. Now I only watched. "You were the only real thing in my life," he said. His voice shook. "Everyone else left me. The public does not care." Veronica left. My friends disappeared. I see it now. I was a fool. I want you, Gwen. I will put you first now. I love you. I looked down at him. He was crying, but his tears were too late. He went through everyone else first. When the stadium was empty, he finally looked at me. I felt no pity. I felt no anger. I felt free. For so long I had dreamed of this moment. Not exactly like this, but close. Sterling seeing me. Sterling understanding. Sterling saying, I mattered. I thought those words would heal me, but they did not, because I no longer needed them. "You do not love me, Sterling," I said. He looked up, shocked. "You are just alone." He shook his head. "No, Gwen, please. You loved your image. You loved your staff. You loved the voters. You loved the cameras. You went down your list, and I was the only one left." His mouth opened, but no words came. "You wanted to love me last," I said, "but I am already gone." Then I walked around him. He did not touch me. Maybe he knew better. Maybe, for once, he understood that I was not his to hold. I got into my car. My hands were steady on the wheel. In the mirror, I saw him still kneeling in the parking lot, alone under a pale light. Then I drove away. That night, I met Julian for dinner at a quiet place near the river. We did not speak much about Sterling. There was no need. We talked about the next session, the first bill, the people who needed help, and the work ahead. At one point, Julian raised his glass. "To the architect," he said. I smiled. Outside, the city lights moved across the water. I thought about the cold hospital room. I thought about the empty chair. I thought about the woman I had been, waiting at the bottom of someone else's list. I wished I could go back to her for 1 minute. I would sit beside her bed. I would take her hand. I would tell her that the empty chair was not the end of her life. It was the first honest thing she ever saw. I survived that room. I stopped waiting to be chosen. I stopped begging for a place in a heart that only opened for an audience. Sterling loved me last. So I loved myself first, and my life became beautiful.